DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We are joined now by Billy Embody covering the SMU Mustangs for On3.com. BYU will be playing SMU September 6th. So to get the lowdown, we bring Billy aboard. Billy, good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Good. SMU making the move. We've seen this with the Utah and BYU. It's exciting when they joined the Pac-12 and Utah and BYU joined the Big 12. And now SMU's moving to the ACC, which means goodbye Navy, goodbye Tulsa, goodbye Temple and those gimme wins and blowouts. And I'm looking at this SMU schedule. BYU, TCU, and Florida State, consecutive home games through the month of September. Do they have the big bodies up front to handle that kind of schedule? And I'm looking at the D-line. Tank Booker. Tank had better be a big guy anchor in that D-line. It looks like there's a ton of size along the D-line. Are they going to be ready to go and handle this kind of schedule?
Yeah, of course, it'll be an adjustment. There's no doubt about it in terms of that week-to-week grind. Having the bodies to physically handle that is one of the reasons why they have really invested in both sides of the ball. For SMU, I mean, they returned multiple starters on the offensive line, but still went out and grabbed one of the top offensive tackles in Andrew Chamblee. They grabbed, multiple depth guys for the offensive line. They've got some really nice veteran pieces there, but they really wanted to address that position overall when it came to competition and adding, swing tackle, another interior option, things like that. But this defensive line, you kind of alluded to it, they've got serious size. Last year, only one player was over 300 pounds, and Jordan Miller, who did a great job, ended up signing with the Broncos after the NFL draft. But this year, they're going to have Mike Lockhart over 300 pounds, Tank Booker over 300 pounds. They'll have Blake Burris over 300 pounds. And there's one other in there that is tipping the scales above 300, depending on the day of the week as well. So they added size, and all of those guys are from Power 4 programs. And they added Jafari Harvey on the edge, who started double-digit games for Miami. They beat out Florida State for Jared Harrison-Hunt, who started for Miami. I mean, they have really addressed that defensive line. You can look across all four spots, and they have a 2 to 3 deep that they feel very comfortable with. And again, all those players, for the most part, are Power 4 transfers who started games and who have now contributed for SMU in some cases. So they're feeling like they address the trenches in the right way. It'll still be a show-me situation for sure, but they've done a really nice job making that a huge priority and addressing it in a big way.
A lot of mock drafts for 2025 have Preston Stone, the quarterback, in the top 5, being a second-day pick, possibly working his way into the first day. We'll see how that plays out. Been around the program, got a lot of experience, so I would imagine that they are expecting huge things out of this quarterback.
Absolutely. Last year, Preston Stone came in and was learning as a first-year starter. He was adjusting to that new, role that he had. He had been around the program, like you said, but hadn't really been the starter outside of one game, and he unfortunately broke his collarbone in that game and was out the rest of the year while Tanner Mordecai was nicked up for a game. But, last year he started somewhat respectable, had his moments of flashes of brilliance, and then also had some moments that he'd certainly like back. But the last few games of the season, leading them to a win over Memphis, rolling with such efficiency, everybody was really excited for his opportunity to lead them against Tulane in the AAC championship game. But he got hurt midway through the second quarter in a blowout situation against Navy, and his season was done for. So there is that positivity around what he can do, but also some questions in terms of durability. But that's why they have Kevin Jennings. He's played very well for SMU when he's gotten into games. And I think no matter who the quarterback is, if Preston is healthy and rolling, or if Kevin Jennings has to be, thrust into action, they'll feel pretty confident about where they stand at the quarterback position.
At receiver, is Jake Bailey the go-to guy? He's not 6 feet tall, a little smaller, but is he a big-time playmaker and the other stuff is just details?
Yeah, I think Jake is a really, really impressive slot option for SMU, and they're hoping that he can emerge to be a big play receiver for them more consistently this season. But I would say Jordan Hudson is kind of the guy that they're hoping on the outside can be a dominant matchup winner, a down the field threat. He's physical, he's competitive. I mean, it's kind of a bad time to make this comp in a way, but he does have some Rashee Rice on-field tendencies in terms of just how he wins at the point of attack and catching the football in those competitive situations. So they're hoping that he's a former five-star prospect, that he can show that type of flash that he had at times last year. He led SMU in receiving touchdowns, kind of quietly, actually, for how limited he was in moments of being used.
You talked about a couple of guys from Miami, but looking at the transfer situation, they've got guys from Ohio State. They've got them from Oklahoma, Arkansas. They got them from Utah, Medlock, the linebacker, who didn't play a whole lot here. Oregon. What kind of impact collectively are these transfers from these big-name programs going to have?
Yeah, those big-time programs is kind of the blueprint for SMU when it comes to who they usually go after in the transfer portal, and that's kind of done that's just done on purpose because those guys have a better chance of panning out for the most part than kind of taking a risk in a sense on guys making the move up in competition. And so it's very much by design that they brought in Power 5 transfers. You look at Savion Byrd, he was the starting right tackle in the spring. He's from Oklahoma, former top 100 prospect. You mentioned the Ohio State transfer, Omari Abor, who's going to be a backup at the edge position. They brought in Deuce Harmon, who's going to start at corner from Texas A&M. They've brought in just plenty of Miami transfers, but I think the biggest thing is I believe every single one of the transfers that they brought in has been at a Power 5 program. And you toss in a national champion and Matthew Hibner at tight end. I mean, they brought in some players that are also used to winning as well.
If you go back 40 or 45 years, SMU was awesome. There's a great 30 for 30 ESPN documentary out there on why SMU was awesome, and they got the death penalty. And now you go back 30, 35 years, and SMU's desperately trying to regain its place in the national polls on the national scene. It looks like with NIL and the ACC, SMU's got a chance. I look at all these transfers PK was just talking about, and I think deep-pocketed boosters really going after it with NIL. And I don't know how sustainable NIL is at a lot of schools, but is it that big at SMU, and is it that sustainable, and are they about to get back in the national scene in a way that the old-timers have wanted to do for decades?
Yeah, NIL is something that SMU has been able to really do pretty well with, and not only being able to pick the players that, they have relationships with that can, I think, fit into the culture that they want to build, but also because of those relationships that are pre-existing, maybe you don't have to spend as much when they trust the coaches. They have a relationship with some of that staff from Miami. They have relationships with coaches that they've played for in the past. We've got some former players for coaches at the previous stops now on the roster that are on campus. So NIL is a big piece. They are starting to, I think, turn it more towards, acquiring high school talent just because, those players from the high school ranks are more attainable now that they are in the ACC. And we'll see kind of how that all plays out with NIL, and certain states have it legal and all of those things. But SMU is definitely on the rise in that perspective. I think they've been able to just really, I think, balance spending big at certain positions like defensive tackle while also being able to address different positions of need and go out and battle with the big dogs. I mean, like I said earlier, they beat out Florida State for Jared Harrison-Hunt and kind of came out of nowhere for that, despite him being a former Miami player. So they're certainly rolling in that regard, and it's got the conference on alert, I would say.
When I was looking at see where Stone ranked as far as professional prospects, I also saw that they got the two running backs, Wheaton and Johnson, listed as potential draftable guys. Wheaton was about 100 spots or so, 150 spots ahead of Johnson, although Johnson had a more yards last season, but I think his Wheaton took he must have been injured early because it took him a while to get out on the field. But it looks like the point being that they're okay at running back.
Yeah, I think running back is a position that has to improve this season. They just didn't get enough out of him. They didn't get enough consistency out of him overall, I would say, this past season. And, it's on the coaching staff to figure out. I mean, they've got a lot of talent. They've got a lot of options in terms of former four-star prospects and, players that I think just have the, ability to produce. And so that's what SMU's got to figure out, is which guy is going to be the hot hand, which guy is going to be, just the guy that they ride, because they did not have that this season. And they brought in Brashard Smith, who's listed as a wide receiver, is a incredible kick returner, was fourth nationally in kick return yardage on average. So they brought in that explosive playmaker that they're going to put in the backfield a good bit. They've just got to find the hot hand, and all four of those running backs are different molds. L.J. Johnson's a bigger guy. Kamar Wheaton's kind of a combo. Jalen Knighton's explosive, and then they add Brashard Smith. So they've got to figure out how to get more out of that position to take some of the load off of Preston Stone and the rest of the offense.
Billy Embody joining us, covering the SMU Mustangs for On3.com. BYU will be down at SMU, non-conference game in early September, and the Cougars are going to want to throw the ball. The secondary looks like a little work in progress. A Texas A&M transfer, Deuce Harmon, may figure in there prominently. It sounds like the jobs are up for grabs. Is there anything you can say definitively about the secondary right now?
Yeah, I would say that the safety position is really impressive. I mean, they lost a veteran in Brian Massey, who's kind of relegated to a backup role at this stage in his career, but they return Isaiah Wacobia, who was the MVP of the AAC championship. They return Ahmad Moses, who a lot of people are high on. They return Jonathan McGill, who's a former Stanford captain who was unreal last year for SMU. Two nickels in C.J. Sanders and Brandon Crosley that they really like a lot. And the corner spot has players that they're really hoping take the next step in their SMU careers this season. And they're going to need them to, because this is a group that I think has been able to rely on having really impressive cover corners with Charles Woods and Chris Meganson last year. But now this year, there's not a clear-cut shutdown player. They're going to need somebody to step up in a big way at the cornerback spot. And so that's what the staff is kind of hoping for. And if they can maybe find a corner late here, they'd love to do that and bring them in as well.
I read where season tickets are sold out. People are really jacked about the Mustangs, huh?
Yeah, record-setting season ticket sales for SMU, which is good to see. I mean, they make the move to the ACC, and I think they obviously have invested a lot of money into this program, both giving up TV revenue, but also putting together I would say $250 million in facility upgrades on top of supporting the programs with NIL. It's just a really tall task for this program to start from where they were and now be where they're at. And they've been able to accomplish a lot in terms of getting to the level that they need to be to survive long-term in college football. I think this is, a pivotal moment where if you're not in the club of the group of, or the Power 5, Power 4, whatever you want to call it, then you're going to get left behind probably permanently. And so SMU invested in it. They've made the move to the ACC, and it's paying off in a big way already. And fans are supporting that. And Dallas, I think, if they are competitive this year and maybe get a win over BYU at TCU, and are 4-0 headed into that matchup with Florida State. I mean, that stadium really could be sold out and rocking for a big historic moment where SMU plays its first ACC game.
There are a lot of BYU fans in Utah who want to transfer the game, and there's a lot of BYU fans in Texas who will just drive over to the game. So with these season tickets sold out, is that because everybody wants a seat for the Florida State game, or are these people hardcore and the secondary ticket market is going to be really slow and it's going to be hard for BYU fans to get tickets? Because they can turn out 5,000 fans easy, and BYU, some places can turn out 10,000 fans easily. But is that really going to be possible, or is it going to be super expensive to get into that game?
No, I don't know I don't think they've sold out the stadium. They've sold over 12,000 season tickets this season as of now. And of course, we're sitting in May, and there are a lot of new people that are buying tickets. But I think they should be able to find reasonable tickets and get into the building for that game, in my opinion.
Well, Billy, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us and talking a little SMU football.
Anytime, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Billy Embody covering the SMU Mustangs for On3.com. Coming up, Tim Lacombe, Jazz Radio Studio Analyst. We'll talk NBA playoffs with Tim next. And it's a Win Ticket Wednesday. We'll be giving away tickets in about half an hour right here on The Zone.